Well, we are going to talk about one of your books today.
Okay.
And we're talking about A View from Joy's Window, 7 Reasons to be Joyful. I think this is so needed right now because I've been hearing some stats recently about how we are in the saddest period that we've ever been in. Ever since the pandemic hit, I think I heard 2021 was maybe the saddest year on record since we started tracking these things. So in the midst of this, in the midst of these times, these depressing times for many, you wrote this book about joy. What was your motivation for doing that?
Well, my motivation was really simple, and you just said it. These are dark times and depressing times. And if there's ever a need or a call for us to be joyful, especially in the midst of our families, I hope home is a joyful place. And if you look at the stats, post-COVID, the rates of emotional disorders have skyrocketed, and especially among young people. I was just at a youth conference a couple years ago, shortly after COVID, and I was on a van with high school students. There were 6 girls sitting in the front 2 rows. They weren't talking about Taylor Swift. They weren't talking about sports. They were talking about the anxiety medication they were on. And I'm going, we just need some joy. Mm-hmm. And I think of all people as Christians, we should be the most joyful people in the world. And, I'm an old guy now. And I always think about Paul's words to the Ephesian elders. As he was saying goodbye, he said, I want to finish my course with joy. I don't want to be a grumpy old man. One of my goals in life is to not grow up and be a grumpy old man. Look at the fruit of the Spirit, which I think is the key to the Christian life. Grumpy's not on the list. I think we ought to be joyful. Now, I may answer it later, but I know there's sadness. Mm-hmm. I wrote a book on grief, too.
Yeah.
I just was talking to a friend of mine who went through a very tragic death, and she said, I find myself filled with joy in the midst of my sadness. So I think you can do both of those, and I think that's one of your questions that you have. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's good, and and I'm sure we'll come back to that. I look around society, and a lot of people find their identity and happiness in what they do. They define themselves essentially by their jobs, and when they can't do those things, it seems like their happiness just disappears.
Yeah.
In the book, you say that society has actually lied to us by saying, if you work hard enough, you can be anything you want to be. What should we be telling people instead?
Yeah. Parents have said this for years. You study hard. You work hard. You can be anything you want. I totally I would love to be a great singer. I could work the rest of my life. I sound like a dog with its tail in a barbed wire fence. I can't be. Here's my answer to it, though. You can't be everything you want to be, but you can be everything that God designed you to be. And God has designed us all to be something. And when you discover that, then you'll have fulfillment.
Well, each chapter of your book mentions one reason to be joyful. Of all 7 reasons, is there one that stands out to you most?
Oh, absolutely. And let me just say, one of the purposes of the book is not to give you an exhaustive list out of joy, but for you to find places where you can be joyful. I just listed these 7 that bring me a lot of joy, but I think it's the second chapter. It's the chapter on that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. You may find this surprising. I don't know. A lot of people do. All my life, my entire life, I've struggled with the whole issue of self-worth, self-esteem. I can tell you, I'll walk away from this conference feeling I did a really bad job. Every time I speak, every time I do anything. But this chapter, let me tell you a little story about this chapter to ruin it. When I was doing some clinical training, one of our trainers said, I want you to write a fairy tale about yourself. It was the most cathartic thing I ever did, and it's in this chapter. I wrote this fairy tale, but it was about me, about a clown who always wished he was a flyer. My brothers were great athletes. I was okay, but I wasn't great. They were great athletes. I always wanted to be my brother. They didn't make me feel that way. Neil made Neil feel that way. My parents were very supportive, but I felt like I disappointed them. So all my life I struggled. So that chapter is a constant reminder that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And when you read about fear in the scriptures, it's not like God's about to zap you. It is this, it's this sense of awe and reverence. So when he created me, when he was knitting me together in my mother's womb, which I think he missed a stitch, but when he was knitting me together in my mother's womb, he stepped back and went, oh, wow, that's what I just did. Look at that. I have to constantly remind. So that's if I have a favorite chapter, it was the most personal and significant to me.